Frank Klose does a great job covering the Phils, Sports Talk Philly, and of course our MLB Philadelphia Phillies Insider. Kind enough to join us for a couple moments. How you been, Frank?
I'm well. Yourself?
I'm doing well. Good to catch up with you. And the Phillies, don't look now. They won 2 straight. You get the homer from Joseph last night to spark that rally in the ninth. They come from behind. They beat the Mariners. You saw Franco and Herrera hit some homers Tuesday night in that 8-2 win. Let's get to a couple things. What's the latest as far as with the trade deadline right around the corner? There are several reports and several players that are expected to be moved. Now, again, when you say expected, it's almost like a guarantee. I don't really think that's necessarily the case before July 31st, but let me give you 2. What's the latest on Pat Neshek? Because I was reading, and I don't know if you can add a little bit to this, and I'm sure you've written about it, that there's already some offers on the table for him.
Yeah, Jim Salisbury of CSN Philly is reporting that the Phillies have a standing offer on the table. That's the language he used for Neshek. I would imagine that this offer, that's the standing offer, isn't too overwhelming because the Phillies haven't taken it. But I do believe Neshek is somebody which is going to get the eye of a lot of teams. I mean, and you remember when the Phillies were contending, every year they always could use a boost in the bullpen, even when they had the bridge to Lidge. An extra reliever is always something very, very valuable heading down the stretch run, especially in this day and age where the bullpen gets so much more attention. And, a lot of the championship teams in recent years have had a lockdown 7, 8, 9. So I think, the team that might have that offer on the table might be the Washington Nationals. Ken Rosenthal did link the Nationals to the Phillies, talking Pat Neshek. We don't know if that's the team that made the offer, but the Nationals are in desperate need of bullpen help, and certainly Neshek would help their cause. I mean, the Nationals bullpen has just been a total mess. If you think the Phillies are bad, imagine being the Nationals where you're supposed to contend and your bullpen is letting you down every night. So, I mean, luckily for the Nationals, they're probably going to win the NL East no matter what, even if their bullpen is bad, but they definitely want to have some real pieces for the stretch run and into the playoffs.
Yeah, and I know it's only a minor league deal, but they did sign a couple days ago. Francisco Rodriguez did the Nationals. But you're right. I mean, if anything, if that's one of the Achilles heel with that team, it's certainly their bullpen. That actually might be their undoing once playoff time rolls around. Neshek, it's funny because you talk about him. He's probably been their most consistent option out of the bullpen this year. But let me ask you this before we get to another player that potentially is on the block. Who, in your estimation, has been their best player this year? Has it been Herrera?
Yeah, I think so. Herrera's a player I've always really liked. I always thought he had a lot of tools, and I was really looking forward to watching him play and putting it all together, and he seems to be finally doing that. Now, the unfortunate thing is, he would work out a lot better if he was one among a cast, and he really got to fit in the role. I'd love to see Herrera as a number 2 hitter playing center field. I think that would make him his most valuable type player. But I think, given the Phillies circumstances, he's got a bat third now, which is probably a little bit much to ask of a young player like that. But I think if he's still around when the Phillies do put some pieces in place, he gets to function in a lineup the way he's supposed to function. I think Phillies fans are going to see what a nice all-around player he is.
All right, if Howie Kendrick appears to be headed towards the disabled list again, with that being said, we always talk about who they're gonna call up, right? I mean, think about it. You have to have that corresponding move. Who would be that potential corresponding move?
Well, I tweeted this last night. I think if Howie Kendrick lands on the disabled list, the Phillies absolutely, positively have to promote Nick Williams. I think they're not in a position anymore to sort of patch it together with fringe major leaguers like they've tried to do. They've really tried to avoid bringing the prospects up. They really want them to have some seasoning. But down at AAA, Nick Williams is the most consistent bat. He's on the 40-man roster. I mean, right now, the Phillies don't have anybody else in terms of position players that they can really bring up unless they start dipping into their prospects. Roman Quinn is on the disabled list. Otherwise, he probably would have been up ahead of Cameron Perkins. And really, besides dipping to a Nick Williams or a Dylan Cousins or a Jorge Alfaro, they don't have any other position players on their 40-man roster. So I think what they're going to have to do at this point is if Kendrick does land on the DL, they need a left-handed bat that's steady, and I think that their only real option right now stands a trade. But I don't think you want to give up anybody for a fringe left fielder. I think you just bring up Nick Williams and you put him in left field. You play him every day and try to get on with your development here up in the major leagues. I think they have no other option.
Pete McKinnon said that he expects some players to be moved by July 31st. What are the chances that Franco does get traded? I mean, when it's all said and done, because he was supposed to be one of the building blocks again.
Now, yeah, there have been some reports, I know Maikel put something up on 97.3ESPN.com where there are reports that Franco is available for trade widely, but the type of trade that you're going to move a Franco is probably not the type of trade that you make at a trade deadline. It seems to be more the bigger picture, longer term direction type move that you would make in the off season. Now, Tommy Joseph I see in a similar category. I look at the St. Louis Cardinals, who have their president of baseball operations, John Mozeliak. He basically said the team could use help at first base, but they don't want a rental. Somebody like him might be a fit. But, if you don't match up on a trade, Joseph is probably the type that gets moved in an off season where somebody's, maybe a team like the Royals or the Athletics who by then may have moved on from Eric Hosmer and Yonder Alonso, might want somebody like Joseph down the line. But in terms of these big pieces that would really draw your attention, they seem to be the type of deals that happen in the off season. So I think the Phillies trade deadline will probably consist of just a few veterans,
right?
Shaq, Kendrick if he's healthy, and then maybe Daniel Nava. But Hellickson if he pitches better. But we'll see. That remains to be seen. He's got a couple good starts in a row, but he might not interest anybody if he's struggling.
Yeah, and listen, at the end of the day, every team listens to offers regarding every player. I don't care who it is. Every team does. You're right, it doesn't necessarily equate to a trade or a move or any type of corresponding move being done. It's tough. Let's go back for a second. And we've talked about this, right? When you have this type of losing streak, this type of bad baseball, this run of bad baseball throughout the season, because it's creeping on historically bad. It's almost there. And you start to get players that maybe have just mentally checked out. And I know, I don't want to pick on Herrera, and I know he was fined by Pete for trying to steal a base over the weekend. He wasn't given the red light. We've seen some of these base running blunders. We've seen some guys not run out ground balls as hard as they should. I know it's easy to pin it on the manager because the manager's job is to get these guys ready to play. But at the end of the day, if you have the wrong kind of dog in you, then that's on the player. Do you think this team right now? Well, let me get your thoughts on that for a minute. If you actually buy into that, and then also when you look at this team going forward, forget about the moves after July, but after the season, do you really think they're going to really look at this roster from top to bottom and basically just strip it down and then try to build it back up?
Well, even back in April, I think May 5th, okay, because I know I was at the Phillies game with a friend sitting in the seats, and I was talking to him, and we looked at that lineup, and I said, there's maybe two players in the starting lineup, and it was the 2017 lineup that are actually going to be around when this rebuild is done. So I think that they're trying to buy their time, and part of the problem is that they went into this season just flat out knowing that they weren't going to win. And you know what? For some players, it does catch up to you. You should play hard every day. I mean, people like Howie Kendrick have been laying it all on the field. Unfortunately, he's hurt. But lately, Freddie Galvis, he basically is. If you look at him the last few days since he made some comments about how the team was playing, he's been laying it all down on the field, trying to set that example.
You better when you make those comments.
This is unacceptable that you don't play hard. And look, I think they're playing worse than their talent level. I mean, I didn't think they would be this bad. I thought that even some of the bullpen pieces would be better. You thought you had something more with Hector Neris. Certainly after a 37-save season, you thought you had more from Jean-Marc Gomez. You spend all that money for Michael Saunders. You expect more than and what he gave you, to the point where they just had to pay him his money and tell him to get lost. But sometimes when you set the bar low, you play down to it, and I think that's the worry that some people are having right now, that the Phillies set the bar too low. They knew they weren't going to win, and it just catches up to some players.
Yep.
And I'm not saying that it should or that's the right thing, but hopefully players like Freddie Galvis will set that tone and just say, look, we still got to lay it out in the field every single day.
The Phillies have an off day after winning 2 straight on the road against Seattle, and then they continue that road set 3 in New York against the Mets starting tomorrow. It'll be lively. It'll be DeGrom pitching for the Mets, who are also desperate to win a couple ball games as well. So certainly bears worth watching how the next month or so plays out. Frank, always appreciate a couple moments. Enjoy the off day. We'll talk next week.
Thanks. Sounds good. Have a good one.
You got it. Frank Klose joined us for a couple moments.